Hey, what's happening, everybody? I'm back. It's Sunday night, and this is Robert Phoenix. There I am. What's happening? We're here. Another edition of Sunday Night Astro Live. Thank you for being here, and we're going to take a little trip through the stars with our, live from our space age bachelor pad, as you can kind of see what's going on in the background here. Jasper's going to be taking a mental health vacation tonight. He's taking the night off. He's stressed out. These are stressful times. And being that he's the super intuitive cat that he is, he needs to take a little time off. So if he shows up, I'll be very surprised. But as for now, he's taking a little holiday, a little mental holiday. All right. I'm here, albeit a tad late, but a lot better than 8 p.m. And we're going to get into some of the events of the past week. And particularly we're still going to look at Bobby Crimo, which is getting weirder by the day, by the way. Imagine that. We have an event that's getting weirder by the day. And then we had something happen on Friday that hardly ever happens. And that's the assassination of a world political leader. It doesn't happen that often. Now, obviously, Shinzo Abe had stepped down from being prime minister. I guess he has colitis, or he had colitis. But he doesn't have colitis anymore, apparently. A very strange event. So we're gonna take a look at that tonight, because when a world leader, even one who has not been the prime minister of Japan for 2 years, it's big news. And he was out campaigning. It was like Donald Trump. It was like Donald Trump out on the campaign trail, stumping for something or someone. And Trump and Abe were buddies. They played golf together. And I think Abe stepped down. I forget which month it was in 2020. But he's been out of circulation a little bit longer than Donald Trump has. So it's a very weird template, a weird format. We're going to look at his chart tonight. And he has some things in common astrologically with Bobby Crimo, which I'm going to talk about. And it has to do with their sun sign and the degree of their sun, which is, I think these are important degrees. And so we'll get into that tonight. I also have the chart for when he was assassinated. And we're gonna do the synastry for that. I don't have his birth time, just like I don't have Bobby Crimo's birth time, but I've assigned them slightly different valuations. Abe was very ambitious, and he was known to have a very hard side to him. Let's put it that way. And when you see his chart, you'll see what I mean. He was kind of in the same sort of nationalist camp that people like Trump and Bolsonaro and to some degree Nigel Farage were in. He was in that camp. And you'll see by his chart how ambitious he was. And then ultimately he wound up having to deal with some of the issues of his chart and his transits. He's one of those people that if you could like kind of scan and look at a chart in real time and say, what's going to happen with this person? It's a problematic chart. That is something that we can track when we look at the two charts. Let's see what else we have. Oh, we got the Georgia Guidestones tonight. We're going to talk about the Georgia Guidestones and the chart for the Georgia Guidestones. And that chart and the shooting at Highland Park Illinois share some interesting similarities in terms of house placement. So we're gonna get into that as well. So we have a very upbeat and uplifting show plan for you tonight. No, there is some. We try to be upbeat as much as we can, as much as the world is cooking right now. Holy smokes, it is blazing hot out here in Texas and also other places around the world. Let's do a quick look at the temperatures around the world. Let's just do that really quickly. How is everybody? You guys enjoying your weekend? All right. Coming to a close here. Get ready for Monday. So let's look at some world temperatures. Things are figuratively and figuratively heating up. So this is going to be in Fahrenheit temperatures. Let's see what we got. Cooling down a little bit. Phoenix. Here, let's just throw this up there. Phoenix checking in at 111. Houston 103. That gives you a sense as to what's happening in Texas. Now the sun is going down. It's almost 8 o'clock at night in Indianapolis, but still 87 degrees, which is pretty hot. Hong Kong is waking up at 7:39 in the morning, and it's 86 degrees already in Hong Kong. So some of these places where you see, like here at Jakarta, 6:40 a.m., it's already 80 degrees at 6:40 a.m. I mean, the world is cooking. Let me tell you, it is cooking. Now, Johannesburg, of course, way down there in the southern tip, 51 degrees, so not so cold in Johannesburg. But the temperatures in Europe have been off the charts. So we're really going through some intense weather patterns. You guys down in Canberra, 37. Pretty cool down there. London, 12:40 in the morning, and it's 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Paris was really cooking. It was incredibly hot in Paris. What do we have? 68 degrees Fahrenheit at 1:40 in the morning. But some of these temperatures were just absolutely off the charts. And here in Texas, it's been, I think we were at 106 or 107. Is the solar system cooking up? I mean, that's what we've been talking about since 2009, 2010. We were talking about all the planets in the solar system were getting hotter, and not just this one. And the quality of the sun is completely different. We're dealing with this white hot pearl in the sky, and it's not the same, golden glowing orb that we've seen prior to the time that we're in. I mean, it's almost like there was a timeline switch or something. All of a sudden, we've got this intense, hot, bright white sun that we're dealing with. And so the question is the sun, what kind of change is the sun going through? And is it being augmented by something else? Does it have a relationship with the binary star? Because at this time, this is when we see Sirius in the morning, right? So we have Sirius and we have the sun, and they're the binary star with one another. So what's happening with Sirius? What's happening with this relationship with these two binary stars? We're going to get into polarity and duality tonight. That's another aspect and topic we're going to talk about. And polarity and duality, which is really fleshed out in the sign of Gemini. Of all the signs in the zodiac, Gemini is the one that's got the most polarity and duality baked into it. And polarity and duality seems to be a psychological, metaphysical, and supernatural tactic that is used as an occult tool. And I'll tell you what I mean by when we get there, because I'm going to kind of dive into this a little bit tonight. And I've been playing with some things in my head and trying to understand dual versus non-dual. And I've been playing with this for a while. And I've always felt like it's neither. Like our experience is neither dual nor non-dual. At times we are dual, and at times we're non-dual. And I always felt like everybody that was trying to embrace and force a relationship with non-duality was missing out on something, right? They were missing out on the aspect of what we would call theoretical evil, or they were missing out on the bad actors in the world, because it was in their best interest to avoid those things and get to non-duality. And when you're in non-duality, it's like everything is sewn up in your head, everything is holistic, everything heaven is brought back together again. It is bound back together with our experience, and there is no good, there is no evil, there is no light, there is no dark. There's only one, right? There's just this oneness. And I've seen people get sort of lost in the fog bank of that thinking, because if you don't really understand what that means, then it can lead to a lot of ostrich heads in the sand moment. But then when you go into duality, which is, we are pitched in duality now. This is a heavy duty duality, like it's just been pitched up. And so we have everything that could be possibly put into the crucible for duality: white, black, straight, fill in your alphabets, Russia, United States, right? Russia, America, theoretically. Again, all these dualistic programs have been put into place. So when you look around, we're living through this, right? And it's so easy to get caught up in the realm of duality. Like, I'm right, you're wrong. We've got the right answer. You've got the right. And they've basically pitted us against one another. The challenge is that now we're in this place where if you have a non-dual perspective that is uninformed, and you're living in this highly charged and programmed dualistic world, then you could be in trouble. Like, you could find yourself in a place where you're naively taking for granted the conditions of the world. So we're in a really kind of weird time. And the duality trip, which again is symbolized by Gemini, is something that is reflective in almost everything we do. It's a symbol that shows up in art. It shows up in, like, even with Major League Baseball. Okay, I'll give you an example. So Major League Baseball teams have uniforms. We know what they look like. The Yankees have pinstripes. Boston Red Sox are generally white. They've got Red Sox, thrown across their chest. I mean, these are just some of the more famous uniforms. Well, now that Nike has taken over producing uniforms for MLB, they have these uniforms called City Connect, and they're taking the city that a team plays in and kind of reimagining it. Like, well, what is characteristic of that city? So now Major League Baseball teams have two uniforms, right? I mean, it's like, okay, we have the traditional uniform and we have this city. Now we know that they're doing that because they want to say the jersey. I mean, ultimately, here's another jersey you can buy. We're Nike, we're in charge, and they get to wear these uniforms, I don't know, a few times a month. I don't know when the appointed time to wear your City Connect jersey is. The Boston Red Sox are the weirdest because they look like the jerseys for the Ukrainian national baseball team. I'll show you here. Here we go. I mean, it is the weirdest damn thing. Patriots Day. Okay, so this is the Patriots Day, and I'm okay. So let me just dive in here and give you kind of. We're getting into the duality thing. Looks like straight out of the gate. Then I'll come into chat and I'll say hi, and we'll take care of some business, and we'll come back. But this is what I'm talking about, right? Patriots Day inspired City Connect uniforms. Okay. Well, I may be uninformed about Patriots Day, and I apologize for that. Maybe there's a reason why they look like the Ukrainian flag, right? The Ukrainian colors. I mean, they're rocking the Ukraine here. And then they're doing it as it relates to what? Patriots Day. Now that's an inversion. And that goes back to the Pluto return when it first, and Pluto's retrograding back, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. We'll kind of revisit that a little bit tonight. But when Pluto hit 27 Capricorn, what happened? This whole thing in Ukraine kickstarted big time, and they began to talk about Ukraine like it was the colonies of 1776, and Zelenko was George Washington. I mean, that's really how it felt. And I've shown you the Ukrainian Molon Labe flag. I'll show that if you haven't seen it. If you're new to the show, welcome, by the way. We had a really great show with Christopher Knowles. Let's see, Ukrainian. Let's do this. We had a great show with Christopher Knowles on Friday. If you haven't seen that, it's on this channel. I highly recommend you go back and check it out. It was a great show. And I'm really looking forward to having him on a Sunday night show so he can drop some of his astrotheology on the show around 9/11. It was a great share. So here we go. The Ukrainian Don't Tread on Me flag. This is what started to pop up. Where did you, I mean, it's like, hello, you know, and it's the same colors as the Boston Connect uniforms, which are right here. Absolute same colors, right? So you can see that reality is at times an inverted spell because they're using Patriots Day, Boston. No other, they could have used that color for any other city. Trust me, easy. I'm sure they could have found a use for that color for it, but they chose Boston Patriots 1776 and they turned it into the Ukrainian color. See, this is the duality, and they're playing now. They're playing with this. Who are they? Well, we get into that a little bit, but the social engineers are playing. These are the people that run institutes like Tavistock, and they run DARPA, and they run a lot of the think tanks and a lot of the agencies that are Hollywood's one of them. Most major newspapers, the networks, they're all involved to some degree, right? It's all about social programming, and getting people on board with the social programming has been for a while, heavily since the death of JFK in 1963. So when we talk about I'm talking about social engineers, social programmers, and to me, they're like the archons, and they're a network. So it's not just like one specific group. This is what's going to happen. And they do have talking points. We've seen it. We've seen their Mockingbird press go across literally hundreds and hundreds of stations with the same messaging. So this falls into that same category, but they're playing with this duality. It's like, okay, we're going to invert this, just like they inverted the Pluto return of the United States, the first go round. It's like the Pluto return is going to be happening in Ukraine, and they're going. It's a 3-card Monte, and they're swapping out the U.S. for Ukraine, and Zelensky becomes Washington, and Don't Tread on Me is yellow and blue, and the Boston Patriots or the Boston Red Sox are sporting the Ukrainian yellow and blue color. This gets into the whole duality game. This is magic, right? This is a supernatural, magical act that is being worked out on people, and this is one of the issues that living in this so-called third dimensional realm brings up. Most people aren't aware of it. There are a lot of really good people out there that are helpful in breaking this down, decoding it, and this is what I try to do here on Sunday nights to the best of my ability. Here, I'll go back. I'll show you. You can even see here the contrast. This is Xander Bogaerts, I believe. And you can see the contrast between the normal look, and he's throwing up his little hook 'em horn sign, the old devil sign there, right? I mean, theoretically, why is he doing this? Why does he just have just one blacked out eye? Then he'd be perfect, wouldn't he? That's the normal color scheme of the Red Sox: red, white, blue. Right there. The New England Patriots, red, white, and blue. Now the Celtics are a little bit different. They're green because, well, that's an Irish color theoretically. And these are the Ukrainian colors. So this is what we're look at that. They're wearing masks. Isn't that patriotic? That is just so fucking patriotic right there. Anyway, we're going to get into more of that tonight when we get into the duality and the Gemini stuff. Okay, so a little bit of business. I'm going to jump into Chattaria and give you guys a warm welcome. I'll be like Hunter Biden at the White House. Hi, how are you doing? Good to see you. Oh, yeah, it's been such a long time, hasn't it? No, it won't be like that. Trust me. Okay, let's do a little housekeeping here before we get going. All right, so a friend of the show, our friend Lisa, who goes by the name of LA Bliss, is she's a Capricorn, so she's being very ambitious, and she's got a lot of talent, and she is doing her best to get on and be the opening act. I got to get the details for this here. Let's see here. Okay. Here we go. All right. So this is at Odyssey, formerly radio.com. And this is the We Can Survive concert at the Hollywood Bowl. Last year's winner opened for Coldplay, Black Eyed Peas, Doja Cat, Kid Laroi, and Shawn Mendes. The 2022 lineup will be announced around August 1st. In addition to performing at the sold-out concert alongside industry superstars, our opening act will receive their own private dressing room, a ton of exposure on the radio, and $10,000. So if she wins, I'm expecting to get at least 1%. No, that's not true. But we like to do things for people that are connected to the show. And Lisa is definitely connected to the show. So we're gonna come back here, and she's got a YouTube channel. Oh, hold on a second. Oh, where did we go? Right here. She's got a YouTube channel, and you can listen to her music. Right. So it's all there. She's on Spotify, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. If you want to, give her a vote. You decide. Right there. So you can give her a vote, pass a few votes on, and see if we can get a Chattarian over up on the stage in Los Angeles. I've lived up to this moment all my life. It's time for my story to be heard, fly, and to inspire people to believe and heal themselves. All right. give the sister a hand. Throw a vote in there or two for her. Let's see if we can kickstart this thing. Okay, what other things do we want to talk about before we jump into everything? Okay. Thanks for asking that question, Robert. You're welcome, Robert. As you know, we are having an event here in Texas in October, and it's with myself and David Palmer, aka the Leo King, and it's going to happen from the 14th to the 16th in Kerrville. This is the 4th year that I've done this. I've done obviously 3 other events since it's my 4th year. Gee, what genius, Robert! And every year has been different. I've talked about this before as being like a movie, and we've had some very interesting movies. And this year, no different. No different. So we're going to have David. He's going to be with us. So this is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Saturday, David's going to be doing some cool astrological stuff. I'm going to be doing some cool astrological stuff. But there's an Aquarian theme here. So you're going to be involved as well. Saturday night, David's going to bust out the beats and the samples and the tones, and we are going to jam on the electro grooves on Saturday night with DJ Leo King. It's gonna be pretty cool. We've got 4 catered meals, plus a few surprises along the way, which I can't talk about yet. But that's all happening. And this is the river that runs behind the hotel. It's the Guadalupe River. It's a beautiful river. And I hope we get some more rain so when we go down there, we actually have a river to go to. And then this is a view of the hotel at night. It's a really nice, very comfortable kind of 1970s. So the rooms are so quiet here. And they have 2 pools. There's this one. This is an Olympic-sized pool. Right back there with the door. See that door? That's usually where we have our event. And this year is no different. We'll have the event there it's a great room. Really great room. I think it's the nicest room in the place because the first year we had it, it was a big box, and I liked it. Don't get me wrong, but it was more formal. It was, rows of seats, like one row. This is kind of more round and curved and has a more, shall I say, inclusive feel to it. So we're really happy with that space. We also have another space next to it. It's a beautiful, beautiful space where, we share our meals, and they do a great job with the food here. So that's robertphoenix.com/harvestmoon hyphen 2022. You just go to my website, robertphoenix.com. It's right there on the homepage. You can read more about the event. We want to get everybody signed up as quickly as possible. And if you get in before, what is that date? Let me just see here. If you get in before August 15th, you get the early bird fee. After August 15th, the price goes up, and you can, if you need to, and we don't want you to, but if you need to, you can cancel up to September 15th. And then you get a $100 cancellation fee. After September 15th, you're in. I can't do anything because they order food and they do all the things that we need to do. And we are going to limit this event to 70 people max. And I think we should probably be close to the max around this. David has a really significant audience, and he's blasting that out to his group. And so if you're watching this, you want to get to the hill country, the weather here at that time of year is fantastic. Oh, there's another pool, by the way, down by the river. It's kind of the secret pool. It's a very cool pool. And it's near a decent restaurant, actually. Now that I think about it, that restaurant's one of the better restaurants in Kerrville. But that pool looks right out over the Guadalupe River, and we can actually use that pool as well. So we have people usually show up on Thursday, and then on Friday, we kickstart everything and get things rolling with the Friday Firecast. And I've done this now for 3 years. This will be the 4th year. So guess what? You guys are the guests when you show up and you're part of the show, right? You get to become part of the show. And it's always a cool thing because ever since I've been doing this, I always get blown away by the people. I get blown away by their stories. It's really cool. I love it. So that's on Friday. Then we have a group event planned for Friday evening. Then we have our first meal that we share together. And that's a Tex-Mex Hill Country special that the hotel will provide. And there's almost always kind of a vegetarian option. So for instance, when we do the Tex-Mex meal, we have fajitas, chicken and beef. I don't think we had beef last year because it was so expensive and hard to get. But this year it's come down, believe it or not. And there's also beans, rice, and fantastic cheese enchiladas and salads. So there's almost always a vegetarian option if you're interested in, if that's your thing. Then Saturday, big day. Saturday is when we dive into the astrology and other related material. And then, of course, Saturday night, DJ Leo King, David himself, is going to tear it up. Womp, 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 womp. Right? It's going to be cool. Then Sunday, we got some other activities planned. Sunday brunch. It's going to be a great time. Great time of year to be here. And a way to connect with people. Now you can reserve a room, which I actually recommend you do. You don't get charged for the room. You do not get charged for the room if you cancel, which is a good thing, right? It's right there. 800-292-5690. You just tell the hotel you're with the Harvest Moon event, and single, double rooms are available. And if you want to go into the 11th house astrology with Robert Phoenix on Telegram, you can go in there. And if you're looking for a room share, people will probably be happy to talk with you if you're going. And you can even go in there and mingle around. Sometimes they talk about astrology in there. Most of the time it's kind of decoding reality. And it's also a good place if you want to see if you can hook up a ride. If somebody's, traveling from your part of the world and you don't want to fly, maybe you want to share gas. That's in there as well. Okay, there you go. The only other thing that I would probably share with you right now is the fact that I do readings. Yes, I do. Indeed, I do. So let me go into the readings page, and you can go to my website, and there's a whole host of readings that you can avail yourself of, which is right here. And they're all there, right? There's very specific instructions that once you purchase a reading, watch the video. That's how you get a hold of me the absolute fastest or the quickest. We have the 11th House Club, which allows you to subscribe $5, $10, $20. I'm about ready to do another event for people. It's like a webinar. That's what it is. So I'm getting ready to do another one, and our members will be able to attend it. And that's anybody from, I've already done one this year, from the $10 and $20 range. At $10, you get 5% off my services. And at $20, you get 10% off my services. Okay. So there's a bunch of other stuff, relocation, Astro-cartography, which is one of my specialties. And a lot of people are looking at places to relocate, move, find new digs. And the thing that I like to think that I have a handle on for the most part, which I think I do, is not only do I look at your astrology and relocate your chart, I also know what's going on from state to state with, their government restrictions, country to country as well. So you're not just getting an astrocartography reading or relocation reading. You're also getting sort of the geopolitical spice. And that can come in very handy. Sometimes the astrology can trump things like that. Like you can be in a part of the world which may not be ideal. But if your astrology is good, you may come out better than other people. That's a fact. Will it be optimal? Will it be prime? Well, how do you feel about being in a place where other people are having a crappy time? I don't know. Some people can live with that. Some people can live with the fact that they're just having a grand old time while everybody else is kind of in the pits. If you have some consciousness and some conscious awareness, that doesn't always fit or feel right. So you want to try to make things even, match them up a little bit. That's just me, Stellium and Libra speaking. Okay, let's go to chat. Let's see who's here, and let's welcome the assembled masses here. By the way, I want to have a big shout out to the mods, and the mods. You'll see them in there. Maybe I think there's a little wrench next to them. They do a great job. They're here for the daily show. They're here on the Sunday night show. They're on the Friday show. The daily show, they don't have to do much modding, but on Friday and Sunday, they've got their wrenches out, and they're just an absolute, a great group of guys to have patrolling the chat. So thanks to them. And if you see a mod or a wrench, say thanks. That's Tom and Steve, and I think Maury is one, and my man Ryan. All right, let's see who's here. We got CC Jones. We got Fantastic. She's here. Solid behind blue eyes. Just operate from love, and you can stay woke, even in the face of adversity. I'm not sure I want to stay woke. Staying conscious, that's a whole other thing. Staying conscious, yes. And I know it's probably just a slight tweak of the language. Just a slight tweak of the language. Remember when being gay, there was a whole different thing about being gay at one point. He's a gay fellow. He is such a gay fellow. Now it's like, you don't even spell it the same way. It's gay, G-H-E-Y. And as far as like being on the pyramid, the pyramid of power, the pyramid of the LGBTQ plus AIGI, whatever, the pyramid of power, the G part's way down there. There's like other levels of power that are higher up on that pyramid. Anyway, just a little exercise in words, woke and gay. Let's see, Nevada, 17A Astrology. Let's see what else we have. Snake Jones in house. What's going on? Brother Shannon. Cheeky Monkey. She retracted her message. You can retract your messages here. There is Benito, the Lord and Master of the Shadowland, where he gets the shadow people to do his bidding. Hey, Shadow Dude, go get me a Big Mac. Yes, Benito. Jonas, the lovely and talented one. Absolutely. Leon, speaking of a lion, Vito Vincent Radway, the Count himself, is here tonight. Welcome to the show. Let's see, who else do we have? Metamedi. What's going on, Michael? This all feels like a 1932 Germany setup. You know what's really interesting, Shannon, now that you bring that up, I was poking around, right? I was poking around with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And there's some similarities. They're not there astrologically, but the Abe thing kind of feels like it. Like we're kind of waiting for this international domino to fall so that it triggers world events. And the Abe event clearly has the earmarks of one of them. It's a little bit earlier than 1932, but I think it's in the mix. Let's see. Ryan is here. What's going on, Ryan? There is Tomas. Good to see you. Wendy Eater's in the house. Susie Gemini. Let's see. Who else do we have? D. Lehman, Georgia Guidestones. Abe, huge fire in the capital of Italy. Yes, we're going to cover the Georgia Guidestones tonight. Let's see. Who else do we have? Sky Gypsy. Hello, back at you, Sky Gypsy. Good to see you. Brandon McWilliams, the Farcast, introduced me to this channel. I'll be playing catch up in the weeks ahead. Brandon McWilliams, we're here for you. Nevad 17 Astrology. I had a big Chiron and Aries revelation this weekend. Good. There's a lot happening there. Sheila Sampson in the house. What's going on, Sheila? Stephanie S. All COVID ads were blue and yellow too. That's right. I remember that. And Walmart's colors are blue and yellow, aren't they? But that city connecting is weird. That's the inversion of the dualistic Gemini magic. All right, who else do we have? Oh yeah, I went into it, man. I got into a yacht rock mode. What's happening, Mickey King? Good to see you. Welcome. Game of Thrones is blue and gold too. Oh, interesting connection. Rita Perea in the house tonight. Wow. We have a consultative organizational rock star with us. Good to see you, Rita. Let's see. Renstar Wanderlust. I use a writing application called Grammarly. They changed their logos. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, Ren. Does not surprise me. Hanging Laundry. Hanging Laundry is hanging out. Meredith, what's happening, Meredith? Good to see you here. Meredith Lucky Stars. Carol, ask you, Carol. I'm going to call you. I'm going to call you maybe after the show if you're around. I know you go to bed kind of early. Blue, yellow, third eye, will with chakras. You guys are switching. Mazumi, what's happening in the house? Diane Evans, good group here. The best. This is the best chat. Let me tell you. Let's see who else do we have here. Astro Sam 2022. What's going on, Astro Sam? You can find Astro Sam, I think, in the 11th house, dispensing astrological insight and wisdom. Bill Smith is here. What's happening, Bill? Love a Scorpio. We always do. Boston, so woke. I know, right? Tinfoil Tiara says, my local farmer's market has a stand with Ukrainian flags, yellow and blue beaded jewelry, and other Ukrainian things. Makes me want to gag. Yellow is a mental color, right? Yellow represents the mind, and blue is trust. That, whenever they want to have a moment with news anchors, right? They throw the blue on them so that they're, more trustworthy. When they want intensity and they really want to, send a message home with some energy, they wear red. Trust their mind. Renee, hello, Renee. Good to see you. Jonathan Picone. What's going on, JP? Welcome in. Susie Escobar. Yes, she's here. The Sea Dragon. Susie the Sea Dragon is here. There's my man, Steve. What's going on? Imagine if Hunter sent $40 billion to build addiction treatment centers in the U.S. When you say that, the call with Hunter Biden starts playing in my head, where he's talking to his brother's wife, whom he had an ongoing affair with, and he's trying to get money to go into a rehab center. I don't know where he is. And she's willing to deal with him directly, but not give him any. Well, we know what he wanted the money for. Hunter Biden needs to take a nice, potent Ibogaine trip. Here, snort this. What is it? Oh, don't worry. It's the best thing that's ever happened to you. All right, who else? Crimi's in the house? Yes, they are. What's going on? Good to see you too. Steve, when I talk about Gemini tonight, don't take it personally, please. Diane Evans is here. What's going on, Diane? Welcome. Let's see. Jelena, what's happening, Jelena? Good to see you as well. Yeah, we're gonna have a good time, Rita. You should come on down. Shirley, que pasa, Shirley? Lana Anderson is here. Yeah, well, if you split the room and you split some driving with somebody in your area, you might be able to afford it. They are not requiring masks on flights. I know. I was on one today. No masks. Although there are people still stubbornly clinging to their face diapers. I'll talk more about that tomorrow on the other show. Okay, who else do we have? Chad Warren, what's happening, Chad? Good to see you. Let's see. Coniferous forest is in the house. Meow meow. It's kind of expensive. It is what it is. I will make no apologies for it. But I think we started off 4 years ago. It was right around $5.99. And you actually are going to be getting more this weekend. Well, I don't know. That first year, I lost my ass financially. I lost money. But I mean, it's gone up, but David's going to be there, right? Let's see, who else do we have? But it hasn't gone up exponentially. I'll say that. Look at that. It's already happening. Mickey having a chat with Lana. Beautiful. See, you guys are networking. Where there's a will, there's a way. Chad says he doesn't watch the news. I don't blame you. I don't either. Bliss Lee is here. Look at that. You guys are already working it out. Dawn checking in as well. Good group. All right, let's get into it. Where do we want to start tonight? Why don't we do the Abe thing? Because I think that is kind of, there's some weird stuff astrologically with Abe and what's his name? Bobby Crimo. Okay. Where are we? Why don't we start off with Crimo? Now, I think I may have talked about this last week, and if I have, I'm going to kind of go back over some things here. Again, I do not know the time of his. What we got? Hold on. Wow. Here we go. All right. All right. So I don't know the time of his birth. So I'm approximating some things here. Usually, like I said, usually when I don't know the time of a birth, I put either the sun on the ascendant, which is a sunrise chart, or I put the sun in generally the 10th house, conjunct the midheaven, which is between 11 and 12, depending on which part of the world you're born in. I didn't do that with Shinzo Abe, and I'll show you why. That's a specific, I kind of just did a quick rectification in my head before the show. Rectification, if you don't know what the term is, it's used in astrology where somebody does not know their birth time. And so you look at certain things, you ask questions, you look at life events, and you assemble a working birth time. So I've done that for a number of clients. And I just did a kind of a quickie for Abe. So we'll get into that a little bit. All right, so let's take a look here. One of the things I want you to pay attention to is Bobby Crimo's 27-degree Virgo sun. He's born on September 20th, 2000. And Shinzo Abe is born on September 21st. Obviously a different year, but they're both in the 27th and 28th degrees of Virgo. And we'll get into Abe's chart. But those degrees are very important. And I've talked about those 2 degrees specifically before. If you look at the genesis of a sign, for instance, he has Saturn at 0 Gemini. It is retrograding, right? Or this might be a better example. Mars at 2 Virgo. Now, from 0 to 10, we know, or 0 to like 9.93 or something like that, or 8.9. That's when the sign is in its first decan, and it has the theoretical most potency because that's the sign it's in. Okay. So here we have Mars at 2 degrees, which means it's a pretty potent Mars. Take Virgo out of the equation, right? It's because of the degree, right? So it's potent here. By the time you get here, right? The energy is running out of the sign. When you get to the 29th degree, which in astrology we call the anaretic degree, the sign becomes flat. Like there's no energy left in the sign. Why? Well, you've reached the end, right? You've seen literally the birth of the sign. You know, it's in its fullness, and then as it goes through the various decans, it becomes less and less potent. Now, when you go to the next sign, so the next sign would be 0 Libra, which you would have obviously at the autumnal equinox. That would be very powerful. Number one, to be on the equinox. And number two, it is fresh, right? It's a fresh sign. It's young, it's blazing, it's pulled right out of the oven. So when we get to 27 and 28, I've used this analogy before. It's like the supernova effect. And you will see how the sign or the energy of that sign becomes very unstable. Now, in Abe's case, he's Japanese. It's not necessarily an unstable sign, or well, it's not as unstable for him theoretically, but his assassination has created what? Potentially instability. So we'll get into more of that when we get to his sign. But the 27th and the 28th degrees are when things are really fluttering, right? Things are getting hot. Things are in supernova mode. So that when it hits the 29th degree, everything kind of goes black, right? It goes black and then it's reborn. So the 29th degree, the anaretic degree it's like a black hole. That's really what happens. The sun, the star collapses on itself. There's nothing left, but it hasn't changed signs yet. And there hasn't been something new that's been born out of it. So what, with the 27th degree in general, and I've looked into events like this, and the most famous, and I've talked about this. Here, I'll even show you. Let me get I've got a song in my head. All right, hold on. Let's do this. I put together this yacht rock playlist, and this song is Another Park, Another Sunday by the Doobie Brothers. Not Saturday in the Park by Chicago. And I got this song in my head and I can't get it out. It's okay. It could be worse. All right. So we're going to look at let's see. Right here. 311. 311. So we can see here on 311. Just give me one sec here. Make sure I have the right coordinates. Yep. Yep. Okay. So in 311, we have Fukushima. And you can see that the run-up, Neptune, which is about to change signs on 3-5, is at that 28th degree. Then it moves into 29. And then we have right here Uranus getting ready to go into Aries just a few days later. So this is when Fukushima is happening. But you can see even before that, right? We're dealing with Neptune. We're dealing with water. We're dealing with Aquarius, uranium, things like that. And here up to the 5th, it's at 29 degrees. And now it's anaretic. And it feels like, it's faded in a lot of ways. And then Uranus goes into Aries. And then just 2 days after that event, I remember how violent the weather was. It wasn't 2 days after, but it was a few days after. About this Saturday, the 19th, I remember it was just coming down, pouring buckets, absolute buckets. And when you get into the weird mythology of it's not even the weird mythology, the weird alternative history with Fukushima. Of course, they talk about, you know, a bomb event right there at the shelf of the ocean, right? And I think they sent the USS Reagan in there, and some of the sailors came back really, really sick. Like, you know, so what really happened? You know, in the 29th degree, like there's kind of this faded quality to that anaretic degree, but things are changing, right? And the instability is really happening in the days before, you know, from the 1st of March on. And when you deal with Neptune, what are you dealing with? You're dealing with the oceans. You're dealing with water. So let's go back to Bobby Crimo, or Crimo. I call him Crimo out of deference to the Crimmies. So he's got his Mars here. Now, again, I don't know his birth time, but it's in Virgo at 2 degrees. And we looked at this freaking T-square, like with Mars and Saturn, down here with Pluto, and even a wide square with Chiron, but mostly Mars Pluto square. And the other thing too, with all this Gemini, and again, what are we talking about with Gemini? We're talking about duality, and we're talking about, to some degree, even in this chart, schizophrenia. You can even look at his aspects with Mercury. Is it which one is squaring Neptune here? Venus. So strange associations with the Venus-Neptune square, right? Venus at the end of Libra. I mean, theoretically, you know, he's got a grand trine and he's trying to, you know, be theoretically creative or somewhat creative, but he has his Earth is not great Earth. I mean, he's got Mars here in Virgo. You've got the inconjunct with Neptune becoming highly influential. This is, to me, Neptune and Aquarius is the video gaming, the programming, right? The influencing. There's an influence going on here with Neptune through this inconjunct. I think it's one of the biggest aspects of the chart, triggering, for lack of a better term. And then this animus towards the father, which is the Mars-Saturn square. It's not just towards the father, it's what the father represents. You know, Saturn has connotations of authority, culture, right? Saturn rules Capricorn, and we're in the last stages and throes of Pluto and Capricorn before, you know, our system theoretically is born anew, which it will be. And this is why when we get into Capricorn, we get into Pluto, we can see Pluto down here, and Pluto is at 27, right? It's in that intense, wired, everything seems like it's in some state of electroshock. And it does retrograde and it will go back to what, 26, if I'm not mistaken, but then it's going to move forward again. So, you know, it's basically kind of caroming and careening back and forth between 27, 28, 29 until it goes into Aquarius, and then it comes back again. So when we see Pluto in these degrees, right, it's at the end of an age. And that plays a significant role in anything, not just with his chart, but it's this Neptune right here. This is, to me, this is getting into his motivation. Mars represents your motivation. What are you doing in the world? Why are you doing it? Where do you put your energy? And this is, you know, the Mars aspect here in Virgo can fold in on itself and become highly critical. This isn't, I would say this is an unstable individual. And I mean, obviously we're seeing this in the media, but we also have this Chiron opposition to Jupiter. We have a Pluto opposition to Jupiter. It's a wide opposition. We have a Pluto opposition to Saturn, Chiron opposition to the moon. The moon is the mother. And his mother, I hate to say this, but she's coming across like a complete and utter basket case, a total basket case. I mean, the tales around the mother and the so-called father are, you know, these are stories that add up to abuse and trauma. So this is in a lot of ways, it's a tortured chart. This Mars has no release at all. There's no, like, he has to go through the Saturn square or he's got to go through the Pluto square, or he's got to deal with this state of hyper imagination and quite possibly programming with this inconjunct. But the thing that I really wanted to point out was this 27-degree sun, which is one. So he and Abe are like consecutive birthdays, 20th and then 21st of September, which is, fairly unusual. Honestly, it's pretty unusual. He has some potential in his chart. He's got these kind of interesting grand trines. He has some creativity, but how is it being manipulated with Neptune here? We could also talk about the influence of drugs as well with Neptune, that in conjunct with Mars. This is somebody who should not be doing drugs, by the way. The whole thing is just completely bizarre. And even his origin story with his parents, with his father saying, well, I'm not really his dad. I'm the caretaker of the property. I mean, that is a big kind of what the fuck moment. Like, what's really going on here with these people? In Jupiter, here trying to somehow mediate the relationship between the mother and the father, which I talked about before. Again, don't get hooked on the birth time, because I really don't have a birth time. Now, we also know about both Abe and Bobby Crimo is Neptune, because Neptune is in opposition with the sun. And that's a pretty significant opposition. Like, they don't know where they're going, right? They could be open to different kinds of influence. In the case of Abe, which we'll look at, I believe they actually changed the location of his speech, right? Which is very Neptunian. It's incredibly Neptune. It's like, oh, okay, we're gonna change that. We're gonna change the location, puts him in a more vulnerable location. And our buddy Masaki has gone into this in great detail, and he's found some evidence that the shooter is another patsy, just like, in my estimation, Bobby Crimo, and that there were other shooters that were around Abe, and that the guy with the homemade gun didn't really pull the trigger and deliver the decisive rounds to end Abe's life. So there's that as well, right? And when we have this Neptune opposition to the sun, it's hard for us to wrap our head around these characters. And even what happened, who is he, right? Who is he? How did he come into this position? How did he get possession of the weapons? All the other things. So when you have a Neptune opposition in your chart, sometimes you can feel like, oh my God, I'm kind of in a daze. I don't know where I'm going. What's my life about? It's a tricky opposition. Anytime you get into a Neptune opposition with the moon, when you're dealing with your emotions, you're dealing with a sense of discomfort, you're dealing with a sense of maybe emotional inertia. Sometimes you'll attach yourself with an opposition, and you'll delude yourself emotionally. Like, you may have, with Neptune, you get delusions of grandeur. And maybe that's what was going through Bobby Crimo, was delusions of grandeur. And again, my sense around this thing is that he's a patsy, and there's plenty of evidence that suggests that he's a patsy. Even with the fact that he was at a Trump rally and he was dressed as Waldo. Where's Waldo? Like Oswaldo. There's a picture of him where he's got a newspaper that talks about Oswald killing Kennedy in the background of one of his videos. So there's all kinds of very, very strange programming. And we don't even know, who his real parents are, for this matter. Right? You have his father basically saying, well, that's not my kid. That's a Neptune Sun opposition. Because we don't really know his story. And even the Abe story, we're not going to be completely clear about this, because Neptune is doing the same thing. He's a 28, he's a 27. Neptune is opposing both. So we're not going to get a clear understanding. So we can project a lot into what's going on here. And we might come about understanding this from a level of the truth. Maybe. In some ways, it's more interesting to have a Neptune opposition. Also for the individual, the Neptune opposition, they open themselves up to influences that they may not be totally aware of. I think the Mercury, Neptune, anytime you get into, like, I think Neptune trines are good. Neptune sextiles are good. The Neptune squares are difficult because it opens you up to vulnerability, and you feel something, then you feel like you have to do something in order to, modify what you're feeling with a Neptune square. And that can be challenging, and it can lead to addictions. The Neptune conjunctions can really fuck with you. Really, I think one of the harder conjunctions with Neptune would be Mars. Like if you have Mars in the final degrees of Pisces, this could be a really challenging conjunction. Now, you may have some creative potential with Neptune conjuncting your Mars, but you may also start something and not finish it. You may get involved in a creative endeavor, and then all of a sudden, Neptune just drains you of your energy and your resources based on that. So the conjunctions with Neptune transits, I think, are hard. Some of them may be a bit easier than others. Maybe a Neptune Jupiter conjunction might be really interesting because Neptune is exalted in Sagittarius. So when you bring the two together, it's like, wow, look, I'm really open here, and I have a lot of inspiration and wisdom, a lot of creative potential. So not all Neptune transits or conjunctions are necessarily bad. Neptune Venus conjunctions can be kind of interesting. There can be a lot of allure, a lot of magic. You can also delude yourself about being open and being available in relationship. The oppositions, I think, are in some way with the conjunctions. You're in it, right? You're in it, and if you immerse yourself in it, who knows where it'll take you? It could take you someplace interesting. The oppositions are challenging because you're dealing with things sometimes that feel like they're outside of your control, especially with Neptune. And sometimes you may not even be aware of it with a Neptune opposition. So how much was he aware of being manipulated? Because we've already seen that he's got a Mars Neptune inconjunct, which is feeding into ultimately this Mars Pluto square, this Mars Saturn square, and even the Mars Chiron square. And Pluto Chiron, man, that's difficult as well. He's trying to get to some uncomfortable realization around the truth. And I can tell you right now, whatever happened to this kid happened to him between the age of 10 and 13. Like that's when he got fucked up. That is the anoretic. That is the degree of the chirotic crisis right there. So it was the Saturn opposition. The Saturn opposition for him is when Saturn was in Sagittarius, right? And leading into the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, then ultimately, these transits that started in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, and ended in 2018. Right? Yeah. Yeah. So this is Bobby Crimo's chart. And not a lot of water, which we've talked about before. What's he want? 22 degrees, Cancer, true node. To some degree, he wanted a family. That's what he came here to do. Have a family, experience nurturing. And what did he get? Zilch. Nada. Nothing. And, whatever you think of the event or the individual, there's an individual there. There's a historical record, right? Whoever he is, wherever he came from, whoever his genetic spawn was, this is the chart that he incarnated with. And he was trying to find something. I think what he found was a nest of manipulation. And who knows if he's a willing participant in it? Who knows? We don't know what his emotional motivations are. He's got a sun moon square in his chart. There's somebody who really struggles with their emotional body. So will we ever know with Neptune Sun opposition? Kind of doubtful. But there certainly is plenty of speculation, and we are doing our best to go down that rabbit hole and do that as well. Let's look at Abe, and you'll see something very similar here. in terms of the two charts. So here's Abe, and this is how I arranged his chart. And the reason why I arranged his chart in this way is because he's very ambitious. And we see he has Mars and the true node and Chiron in Capricorn. Now, I read that there was some Indian astrologer who predicted this. And I bet you what he was doing is he was using sidereal and saw Pluto on Mars in sidereal, which, you know, could be kind of interesting. Correct? But what he would not see, you would not see the Nazi, is the Neptune Sun opposition. Again, 27 degrees. We can see he's born one day after Bobby Crimo, which, again, is it coincidence or is it just kind of this strange Neptunian vortex that the world is in? The world is in a Neptunian vortex at 27 degrees. And we're going to witness the change of signs with Neptune into Aries, and it's going to be fucking weird. I'm telling you, it's going to be really, really weird. Really weird. And we're going to have that Neptune-Saturn conjunction at the end of the Saturn's transit through Pisces, right at the end there. And then they both change signs again. Saturn and Neptune together in Aries. And we could see both the rise of a type of fascism, and we could also see the dissolution of a type of fascism. It's going to be really, I mean, you're living through it. You're going to be a part of it, unless, of course, for, you know, whatever reason, you're not going to be a part of it. And, you know, whatever God's will is God's way. So we hope that you are, and we hope that you witness the best parts of it, even if some of them are difficult. But that's going to be an intense time, you know, because we're going to go through a sea change. When Saturn goes into Pisces, we're going to go through a sea change when it ultimately meets up with Neptune, and then they move together into Aries. And it could be the rise of a what I would call a theocratic or religio-fascistic system, but it could also be the dissolution of that. And both things can be equally true, by the way, simultaneously. That's yet to come. But here we go. We've got Neptune right here opposing Abe's sun. Again, what's going on? Do we really know the story? And the reason I picked this time is because of the ambition of the 10th house, and that ultimately he would die by a gunshot wound, you know, with Mars being very, very prominent here. Pluto, by the way, in kind of a wide conjunction with Chiron. Hello, right? And we have a Pluto-Uranus opposition. Now, that's indicative of somebody who's born around this time. That doesn't mean that, you know, that this is a generational thing, right? Pluto-Uranus is generational. If you're born right around this time in 1954, more or less, you're going to have this. But then we throw Pluto also into the mix with the moon here and Jupiter. What's also interesting is, again, like with the Crimo chart, we see this stellium with the moon and Jupiter swap out Saturn with Uranus, right? And it's kind of an inverted version of the Crimo chart. We have moon, Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn being the original ruler of Aquarius. Here, Uranus plays the role of Saturn in this. Again, it's kind of odd. And he suffered from colitis. So I've got his Virgo sun in the 6th house because he's a Virgo and he's dealing with digestive issues. And then a ton of Libra here. Pluto in square with Libra, right? Transiting Pluto up here, squaring Neptune, conjuncting Chiron. I mean, I could see where, like, if I'd looked at this chart 2 weeks ago and had an ability to just kind of stare this thing down, yeah, I could see that there'd be a crisis, maybe even a death in this chart because of so many things going on. There's so many things happening simultaneously. Right there. Boom. Simultaneously. Pluto-Uranus opposition, Pluto-Chiron conjunction, Pluto-Neptune square, triggering this massive T-square in the chart. Again, I have him as an Aries rising because he was known to have a bit of an iron fist, especially with the Koreans and more particularly the Chinese, who did not like him. And there's lots of very weird stuff going on with the Chinese as it relates to Abe. Like theoretically, there was a tweet that said that everybody was in place and they were going to take him out. This was before it happened. I saw the tweet. It was, it's one of these tweets that can always be suspect, by the way, but pretty intense actually. And then there was a lot of celebrating in China. You have to understand that this guy's grandfather was also the prime minister of Japan, and from a legacy perspective, did not have a good relationship with the quote unquote Chinese. So pretty intense, pretty intense history here. But again, for me, the thing that really gets me is how close they are, like the 20th and then the 21st. It's just before the turning of the seasons too. It's the end of summer. It's the beginning of fall. Both of these characters represent the end of summer and the beginning of fall. And Pluto coming in and being this kind of major trigger event. So what I did is I pulled up a chart here for the shooting, and I have a time for the chart and a place for the chart. So it's right here. Okay, so we have Abe on the inside, and again, I'm throwing Abe's on the outside. My bad. You know what I want to do? I want to flip this. Give me 1 second. I want to flip it. Let me flip this chart. Okay, where are we? Okay, I think I have it. Let's throw a little Eris in here. Discordia. Hail Eris. Okay. Okay, so we're going to have Abe on the outside. On the outside looking in here. I guess I had that. That's what it was before. So what is significant about this chart? Well, we see the sun, right? That's his sun in the 12th house of this event. Where's he going? He's going out of the chart. You can see the opposition with Neptune because, I was talking about that. You can actually see it here with the Neptune opposition right there. Now, Mars is here, and it's at the beginning of Taurus, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just check it out here. Yeah, it's 1 Taurus. So it's 1 Taurus. It's not quite on the ingress to the 8th house, but we do have Uranus in that moment in the 8th house, true node and Pallas, right? So for, let's see, this is kind of a nerd, which is actually fairly interesting. It's not doing a whole lot with Abe's planets, but we could also see where transiting Saturn right there is opposing his natal Pluto. It's another big opposition. So what we're looking for here is some telltale signs. Neptune, again, we see the inconjunct with Neptune here. Just like we saw the inconjunct with Neptune and Bobby Crimo, we saw that in his chart. This is what's happening. And we see an inconjunct with Mercury. That's going on, right? Let's make sure we have the right inconjunct there. So Mercury's at 19. Let's see. It's going to be a little bit deeper. let's see, we got Neptune at 25 Pisces. So it's going to be, we got a Neptune in conjunct. Oh, interesting. Very interesting. And then we have a Jupiter in conjunct with, looks like Saturn as well. There's a lot of inconjuncts or quincunxes in this chart. Here we have a Saturn quincunx with his, let's see, his Uranus and his Jupiter. So anytime you get into these quincunxes, you know, they're the threads of mystery that need to be solved on some level. And you have to literally intuit your way into them. You have to intuit your way into them. You know, in my course, which I do sell, by the way, the analogy for an inconjunct is, think of it as being like being in a forest on a new moon. There's no light, right? And you have to feel your way. If you've ever done that, by the way, it's not always fun. It can be interesting, but you have to literally feel your way through the forest, right? So there's a lot of kind of, you know, step by step by step by step by step in feeling into whatever the resolution or the outer point of the quincunx is, right? You have to feel into it. So when we look at these things, the quincunx or the inconjunct is actually stimulating our intuitive faculties. And in your own chart, if you have a quincunx, and of course, when you throw in the sextile, you get a yod, right? You get the, so what would be a yod here? Do we have a yod in action? We have Pluto and Moon, but it would be transiting Moon, his Pluto, and the yod to Neptune right there. You can see that, right? Pluto, Neptune yod. Looks like a Moon, Neptune yod in that moment. So you have what would be the finger of God or the finger of fate, right? So right there, we're dealing with Neptune and we're dealing with his Pluto and then transiting Moon, which is, again, it's hard to wrap your head around, right? This is tricky. This is, and even with the sixth house, like the sixth house is to some degree is like logistics. The third house and the sixth house have to do with logistics and planning things and executing on them, right? The sixth house is details. Oh, there's a minor detail. We have to change your location. That's very Neptunian. And it put him in a position where he was more open. In Japan, a country known for its obscenely rigorous gun laws. I'm not even sure police own guns in Japan. I mean, I'm sure they do, but and this guy supposedly had a homemade gun, right? That's what it looks like. But again, he feels very Patsy-esque. And the other thing too is that he kind of even resembles Bobby Crimo. I'll show you a picture in a second. So here we have Eris. This is his Eris, right? This is Abe's Eris, and it's conjunct Jupiter here. And guess what? Part of another inconjunct. Bada bing. So this is a very, very complex chart. Lots of oppositions, but for me, the big one, and again, it's both charts. It's the Neptune opposition in both these individuals. This one is just incredibly complex. We don't necessarily see the violent hidden hand, so to speak, over here, but we do see it in opposition, right, with his Saturn. His Saturn's pretty early. What's Abe's Saturn? Yeah, so 6 Scorpio, transiting Mars is at what, a 2, 1. So transiting Mars Saturn opposition right there, right? So these are some pretty intense oppositions. Pluto Saturn, Mars Saturn, Neptune Sun. And those are just 3 of the oppositions in play, not including the inconjuncts. Interesting. So the other thing I'm wondering here is, could there be some kind of spiritual resolution with the Neptune trine? Like, how could this in some ways bring theoretical Japan closer? Not in a very emotional country, by the way. It's a culture that does not display its emotions or wear it on its sleeve, and there's no judgment about that. But I'm wondering if this Neptune trine can somehow have a greater sense of unification. And again, Abe was a nationalist. Masaki thinks he was a cult leader, and maybe he was, right? But it feels to me like, for better or worse, this Neptune trine could have a very unifying factor. The Pluto opposition in that moment, with, again, a lot of the stuff going on here, right? Pluto opposing is Uranus. So we already saw this, right? We saw this in the other chart. There are so many factors here, and they're explosive factors. They're transformational factors. The other one and the reason why I do think he's dead is because this happened when the sun was transiting the 12th house at the time that he was shot. Boom, right? Done. Go meet your maker. It's a pretty intense chart, actually. It'll be interesting to see how this affects Japan. Like, it could go one of two ways. Obviously, I mean, it'll either, and both things can be equally true. The Neptune trine to his and with Cancer as well, it's about memory. It's about memory. It's about tradition, and this is the story that they'll tell, spin, will be positive. It will be one that'll have like a lot of honor associated with, because that's just how the Japanese roll. They don't stomp on the graves of the dead. It's an ancestral culture. That's number one. And number two, they just don't do that. This is a culture that prides itself in saving face. So could that Neptune trine with some of his Cancerian planets ultimately boost Japan's morale? Can Japan become more aware of its Japanness as a result of this? It's an emotional moment. I can tell you that right now. It's an emotional moment. And for a country that does not trade in, emotional content very much. They do. Don't get me wrong. They do. But it's just not on the surface of things. So let me see if I can find the guy who killed him, because that's really trippy. So the story here is it's always the loner, always the loner, always the lone wolf. Tetsuya Yamagami. He's unemployed in 41. All right, so check this out. I can find the guy. Okay. So there are a number of different pictures of him, and some of them do not look like a 41-year-old. Just saying. Some of them make him look like he's a kid. So we have a number of different pictures here. Let me show you. This is Neptune. This is the Neptune opposition. This is what I'm talking about. So here we go. Here's a black and white photo. There's the homemade gun. And supposedly he's 41 years old. Maybe he is. We can look at it in full color. Shaggy hair, bespectacled. There's another picture of him here. At least he's wearing a mask. Now they've got him bound up. Let me see if there's any older pictures of him. Now, okay, so there's this guy. That's supposedly what he looks like. And then there's this guy. Same guy? Maybe. He's wearing a mask, so his identity is occluded, right? Or occulted, rather. Hidden. Here is again. Now, if you ask me with this, I'm just gonna go on the record here. If you ask me, this does not look like the guy that we saw who was 41 years old. This person looks like they're in their 20s. And when you look at him, and I've seen some other pictures of him, he looks a little like Bobby Crimo, which again brings us into the world of duality. Like that is not that guy. Sorry, that is not him. This is a different dude. Again, you're looking at the Neptune-Sun opposition, right? There's this guy right there. This looks like a fucking 41-year-old man. This does not. That does not look like a 41-year-old man. Sorry. That does not look like that guy. This is a grown-ass man. This is not. So we're not getting the straight story. Look, does this guy look? No. No. Sorry. Doesn't look like the same dude at all. I've seen some other pictures where he looks like Bobby Crimo. Thin, scraggly hair. Same story. The loner, holding a grudge. Somehow manages to see. This is another photo of him at some other point. I don't think this is the same guy at all. This dude is different. You can look, just take a look, right? Let me see if I find another one here. By the way, Shinzo Abe sent a bunch of vaccines back when he was president. Said, no, these are no good. We're sending them back. Do you think that made a bit of an impact? Possibly. Here is behind him. I'm sorry, that's not the same guy. Oh, look, they've got a whole grid mapped out. Again, what are we dealing with here? It's the Neptune-Sun opposition. Neptune-Sun opposition. We don't know really what the hell is going on here. But even this guy is supposed to be him. Maybe that's him when he's younger. I can tell you right now, I do not have a degree in criminology or forensics, but this guy here, when he's younger, is that his baseball card? His kung fu card? This guy here possibly resembles, more than likely, this guy later on. Like that could be an earlier version of this guy. The chins look the same. Possibly, you know, like there's a chin there, pretty wide, right? Wide chin, wide chin. We don't see the masked version because they won't let us. They have pretty good instincts. I don't think this is the same dude. And he actually looks more like Bobby Crimo. again, this is all more this high strange that we're in. So we're living in these times where it can be very challenging to get a handle on so-called reality. Pluto in the final degrees, Neptune in the final degrees. Look at this guy. He's just riding along. What the hell's going on here? This kind of looks staged. Does Tetsuya Yamagami have kids? I don't know. I hope not. So now they've brought him down. Of course, Zelensky has an opinion on everything, so he'll chime in. Yeah. What do you see? You don't see, to me, I don't make the connection between the image of the guy who he's supposed to be and the image of who we're seeing. So when you look at him, he's got that. I've seen some weird pictures of him. See if I can find another one. Let me go to another search engine. What's this one? Oh, so there's another guy. Oh, again, here we go. This is another example of this Neptune Sun opposition. Check it out. And this is why so they theoretically don't match. Hideo Kojima mistaken for Shinzo Abe's killer. Crazy case between social media and media. So this guy that we were looking at is not the same guy. Today, the world has been shaken by murder of former Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, by a man blocked and identified shortly after by the police as Yamagami Tetsuya. But this did not prevent the spread of the absurd case that saw the latter mistaken for Hideo Kojima. Started from a sort of joke, but spread in a worrying way. So we're not going to get the image here. So even the images of this guy are, it's just, the thing is totally bizarre. And apparently this guy has a background. This Kojima guy has a strange background associated with media and death, right? That's the same. This guy is connected to. He's a looks like he's a Maoist. Wrongly. So again, this is so bizarre. This is really strange. Really, really strange. So here we go. Now we're into Bobby Crimo land, right? This is all the Bobby Crimo imagery. Politician, the extreme. Do you see what I'm saying? This is stuff that Bobby Crimo would have done. Shit like this. So they're front loading all this imagery right here with this guy. This is crazy. Here's more of that imagery. And we saw shit like this in the Bobby Crimo. So they load up on this. Same guy right here, 1984. The kind of the socialist politics of Metal Gear. Solid and Hideo Kojima. So this is really a trip. Metal Gear Threads Rising, Metal Gear Threads Before Rising. New Order. So they're using the mythology of this guy, this Kojima Productions, Metal Gear Solid. And they use this as the impetus to nail the other guy. Again, this is Neptune Sun opposition. I mean, this is all like Bobby Crimo shit. When Hideo Kojima is accused of murder by the French far right. Okay, so what is really going on here? This is so bizarre. Death Stranding creator Hideo Kojima misidentified as Shinzo Abe's assassin. This is just really wild shit. But then you look at the other guy who's supposed to be 41 years old, and he's not 41 years old. It doesn't appear to be 41. This guy, that's why they don't look the same. They're not the same dude. So apparently he's got some kind of art line, big boss Che Guevara, aligned with communism, Maoism, lots of death imagery. Here he is again. The whole thing is really bizarre. The transposition. So this is like dark magic. So he's a game designer. This thing is like dark magic. And we really don't know much about the other guy. This guy's at the Tribeca Film Festival. Now, why would, I guess, is that Le Pen? Far-right politician accuses Hideo Kojima of murdering Japanese president. Oh, this is nuts, right? I mean, now we're into like celebrity assassins, like Chuck Barris. Like, did this guy possibly have a role in this? Why is Marine Le Pen saying it? The whole thing is really weird. But that's what happens when you get a Neptune Sun opposition. You don't know, right? You're like, oh, there's, and again, it's like this mistaken identity, maybe, this strange duality magic. And they have this guy who has plenty of visuals and background that would theoretically identify him as a prime suspect. And guess what? He's not. He's not. This other guy who, again, doesn't look like him, he's the prime suspect. But you have all the imagery that's associated with it, just like with Bobby Crimo. And you have all the videos, you have the still photographs, like all the weird shit with him, the music, all the things that theoretically would identify him as somebody who'd be a person of interest. But is he really the person who did it? Just like this guy, the whole thing is completely and utterly bizarre. And both of these guys are born on September 20th and September 21st with the Neptune opposition, one being the so-called killer, one being associated with being the so-called killer. And then you have, it's like a weird body double thing. And that's the other thing with Crimo. And I was looking at, and I have to watch the movie, but there is a Brian De Palma movie called Body Double, which gets into like cross-dressing and using like an assumed identity to become a killer. So anyway, this is again, Neptune Sun opposition. One is the killer, one was killed. Both of them have strange issues around identity and even the people who theoretically killed them. Both have strange imagery associated with them. One with this Hideo Kojima and his solid Metal Gear stuff, which looks socialistic, fascistic, right? And then you have this far right politician who's saying this is the guy who did it. Well, why do they say that? The world is not as it seems. And again, because we're in those final degrees of Neptune and Pisces, right? Which is the not the, but it is in the final decan of the whole Pisces journey, the whole Neptune through Pisces journey, which puts it in the Scorpio decan. And we're dealing with things like that. The thing is nuts. It's completely nuts. But that's what we're and so when we're dealing with that, just on these two cases alone, then how do we deal with reality, so-called reality? There are people, not people who are watching this or who are in chat. If I were to say, hey, what's going on in the Netherlands, you guys would have plenty to share about it. But there are people who don't know what's happening in the Netherlands right now. They don't know. It's across the water, which is very Neptunian. And the Netherlands it's mostly water that, by the way, right? When you fly into Schiphol Airport, you look down and holy shit, man, this is like, these are like little islands. This used to be land and maybe it's sunk or whatever, but you begin to see it, right? You begin to see the presence of water is everywhere. But you would ask certain people, like, do you know what's going on in Holland or the Netherlands? They say, well, no, we don't know. It's because it's not being shown on mainstream media. Again, this is very Neptunian. And so this is the world that we're living in now. And I would say when we deal with these outer planets, which I've talked about before, Pluto in the final degrees of Capricorn, Neptune in the final degrees of Pisces, both in their same signs too, right? Like, well, I take that back. Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio, but the ruler of Pisces is definitely Neptune. Definitely Neptune. So, but we're in the final degrees of these signs, and I think a lot of what we're seeing on the world stage is the madness of those degrees, where it's we're watching the transformation of culture before our eyes. Is your health break over? Is your mental health break over? Why don't you come in here? Come on. Your adoring fans want to see you. He's having a hard time with Neptune. I can tell. Well, come in here. I'm streaming. He may come in here. He's having his Dudley Moore moment. So this is what's going on, right? And when you get to those final degrees, you're dealing with collective madness. It's exactly what's going on. And I'm going to make a transition here to the Guidestones, which I think is part of what we're talking about, right? Because the Guidestones, again, theoretically had, the commandments of the new world. Keep the world 500 million and less, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We know all the weird synchromistic stuff happened on George Bush's birthday. George Bush being, of course, a member of Skull and Bones, 322. The Georgia Guidestones were erected on March 22nd, 1980. So there's all this overlay, right? You have King George the 13th. Is that, Georgia was the 13th state named after King George. So you have the George thing going on 3 times. George, Georgia, and George. Like there's a ton of synchromysticism around the Georgia Guidestones. But what I've seen, and we're going to get into it, what I've seen is that there was a lightning bolt that hit an obelisk in Italy. And people were like, oh, that's an act of God, right? Oh, look, another satanic structure has fallen. I'm like, are we really now on architectural witch hunts? Is that what's going on? Are we on an architectural witch hunt? By the way, that land that the Georgia Guidestones was on, it's federal land. And so there's a lot again, but what are we talking about here? We're dealing with Neptune in these final degrees. And some people were saying, oh, well, guess what? Guess why they took it down so quickly? And they wasted no time. They got the bulldozers out. They didn't do any forensics at all. None. They had a job to do. And that job was to dismantle everything and move it as quickly as possible. So there's a theory or rumor, a whisper, that there was blood on the Georgia Guidestones. Now, again, I don't have any hard evidence for any of this. I don't have any hard evidence, but we're in this Neptunian fog where people are going to talk about stuff like this. And that one of the reasons why they took it down is because it had opened up something in the Guidestones where they found blood. And that there's a rumor that they were doing these quote unquote ritual sacrifices around the Georgia Guidestones. Who am I to dispute that? Because we know that these things exist. I mean, and we're living in a world where a lot of this now is starting to come to the surface. We're starting to see the seamy underbelly of this dark world that has been beneath our feet almost the entire time we've been here. And we're seeing it erupt more and more and more on a daily basis, especially through social media. And I talked about this last week when I was talking about how with the United States chart and the Pluto return, we saw Neptune, I'm sorry, not Neptune, but the South Node in Scorpio move it to the 11th house of the US chart. And I was perusing social media, the 11th house, over the last 72 hours. And the shit that I saw, blow your mind. Absolutely blow your mind. I'm not going to play it here, but I'll narrate it here. There was a woman, I think it was either an auto parts store or Dollar General or something like that. I think it was a Dollar General. And this woman was bitching at this other woman behind the counter. And she was bitching at her and bitching at her and bitching at her. And she decided this is like the Dave Chappelle episode when keeping it real goes wrong. Like Braid Mama was keeping it real. And it was the worst decision of her so-called life. Apparently she's still alive. But she decided that she was going to go behind the counter and show that and teach that bitch a lesson. She went back there and she whomped on the woman who was actually working at the store. Whomped on her. Took her into the aisle of the store, right? And then the woman who was working behind the counter decided that she was going to teach her a lesson. She pulls out a gun and she caps her and then starts stepping on her. And it's like, you sorry now, bitch. You sorry. I mean, it's crazy. This is on social media, by the way. That's just one. I can tell you another one at a McDonald's. The new game apparently is get pissed off because your McNugget sauce is out, or the shake machine is out, or the ice cream, whatever. And then it's a riot at McDonald's. And you've seen these things. Well, I saw one where they jump over the counter, and all of a sudden the McDonald's guys are like, okay, we're not playing like that. And they start, going lights out on these people. I saw another one, same deal, different restaurant. And this guy comes out of the back with probably something to clear the fryer or, one of their machines with. And, he starts wailing on these people like he's driving a fucking golf ball. This is all in the last 72 hours. This is all 11th house stuff. This is all South Node in Scorpio in the US chart. It's coming out now. This is all coming up and it's all coming out. So we're seeing that much we know. This Neptunian stuff gets very difficult because now with Neptune, you can project into a lot of things with Neptune. So you can project into the Guidestones. And Pisces is dual. right? So some people are saying, well, this is a sign that the Guidestones were taken down and the good guys, the white hats, are beating the black hats. They're taking the cabal down. That could be true. It's possible. There's another side that says, well, guess what? They're tearing it down because they don't want any smoking guns around the 500 million part. 500 million people. That's what they want in the entire world, right? It's like, well, gee, go look at the Georgia Guidestones, and you can see basically the playbook for theoretically what's taking place and what will take place. So this is Neptune. This is very Neptunian. This is very Piscean, and people will lean into things based on their predisposition. If they have a predisposition or they have a faith-based kind of perspective, that's where they'll go. And both of those can be equally dangerous, because when that happens, people are accused, well, people assume that their position is the correct one or the right one, right? And now we're into kind of this strange territory of Neptune and Pisces, where it's almost cult-like in some ways, both sides. This gets into the whole dualistic realm of, occultic magic, which we're going to get into, by the way. But before we do that, let me look at the, so this is the Highland Park shooting. Do I want to get into this? Why don't I get into this just a little bit? Because I'm going to bounce it off of the Guidestones. So what's interesting here with the Highland Park shooting, this is the exact time, 10:14 a.m. So whoever started plinking at that time. And so you have Mars here at the anaretic degree of Aries in the 8th house. We know that the 8th house is a house that's associated with death. The two houses that are associated with death are the 8th house, which is the death of the ego in a lot of ways. Sometimes it can manifest in actual physical death. And then the 12th house, which takes us out of the chart. So we have Mars here with the Mars-Pluto square. Kind of a no-brainer, right? Happens during this Mars-Pluto square. But again, we see Venus in Gemini, and that is conjunct Bobby Crimo's Jupiter, right? Bobby Crimo has his Jupiter at 10 degrees. So what's going on here, right? We're seeing, again, this picture of duality. It's like these strange mirrors that are taking that we're, you'll see what you want to see in the distortion of the mirror, especially with this event, because you'll have one side that will run with this thing forever. Every 4th of July that happens from here on out, they're going to tell this story about this, who, by the way, conveniently, oh, there's a deer in my yard. How cool is that? Just stay away from my plants. I got 2 deer in my yard. That is really cool. They're young deer too. Looking around. Here's me talking about them. Somebody's talking about me. And just stay. I don't have much of a garden. Just stay away from it. There's plenty of things for you to eat there. Lots of grass. Yeah, eat that grass. I've been watering this grass for you guys. Anyway, yeah, this is crazy, right? And then his moon. Well, the moon's in Virgo, so it's conjunct. Not quite, but it's close to being conjunct with his Mars, because he has Mars at two Virgo. So it's kind of outside the conjunction, right? Anyway, this is the event right here for Highland Park, and the big kahuna right there, the Mars-Pluto square. And I really thought that because we have had times where it has been way more contentious, and I really thought that when Mars was in Aries in 2020, summer of Floyd, going through that square ultimately with Pluto would be a bit later, but still we go through it. I really felt like that Mars in Aries on the 4th of July 2 years ago was going to be fire. Well, looks like this Mars was a bit more fire in some ways. Mercury here at 28 in a conjunction with Bobby Crimo's moon at 20 degrees, a wide conjunction, but a conjunction nonetheless. So what's going on there, right? What kind of messages is he receiving? And then we have this in conjunct with Pluto, two in conjuncts happening. This is the big one, right? This is the big one. The transmission, the death transmission. All right, let's get into Highland, or not, the Guidestones. All right, so I guess they're back over here. Okay. Guidestones end. All right. Take a quick peek at this. So I did a brief little breakdown on Twitter here with this. But you could see what's interesting because we have a time, 4:03 a.m. And then we saw three, like this thing hit it, whatever this thing was, rod of God, lightning, delayed charge, who knows, right? Again, we're in this Neptunian realm where imagination in some ways is more powerful than actual facts and data, and will be overwhelmingly so through these latter stages of Pisces. But we know the time here, and here's Mars. It had just gone into Taurus, and it's in the 12th house. So somebody wanted this thing down. I mean, we know this with Mars in the 12th house. Mars in the 12th house, especially here in Taurus, is adversarial. In the 12th house, hidden enemies. Uranus in the 12th, explosive. It's explosive in the 12th. So there's a lot going on here. The pattern has to do with what? Pallas, Gemini 0. The other thing that's strange about this whole thing is the relationship with George Bush and the Twin Towers, because he was president when the Twin Towers went down, and this happened on his birthday. So there's something here. To me, this is the hidden piece. We have a time, we have an event, and we have Pallas at 0 Gemini. Pattern recognition. You go back and you look at 9/11. Where was the moon? It was in Gemini. Where was Saturn? It was in Gemini. Very specific. We have Venus in Gemini. We have the ascendant in Gemini. Mercury by this time has moved on to Cancer. It was in those final degrees. Again, final degrees when it was the shooting at Highland Park. And what do we have? We have two Georges, not just King George, whom the state of Georgia is named after, Georgia being the 13th colony, if I'm not mistaken. You have both fathers named George, right? And one of whom is a Gemini. And I think George Bush's son, I think, is in the 12th house. We'll take a look at his chart here in a minute. But I think this is interesting. Something here is connected with this pattern, right? This pattern that is connected to the twins and the Twin Towers. And this going down on, I think this is, to me, I think this is significant. And here we have Saturn right here at the top of the chart, and it's retrograding. It's retrograding backwards. So we've seen Saturn in play in Aquarius. We saw it happen right at the beginning of COVID. And we saw the rise of Fauci and everything that goes along with Saturn. Saturn being his ruling, the sign of his ruling planet, which is Capricorn. But here it's retrograding on the midheaven. So the motion of this event with Saturn placed almost at the pinnacle of the chart, it's descending here, is moving backwards. I think this is quite interesting. Just in this placement alone, it's moving backwards. It's beginning to move away. It won't, because I think Saturn goes to, what is it? I think it does go to 19, if I'm not mistaken. It goes to 19 degrees. So it will hit the midheaven here, and it's almost as if it's a bit of a reset, right? That this event is connected to some kind of reset. We're still in the Mars-Pluto square because of the degree, but Mars is in the 12th. So there's something going on here. Obviously, this is not, we have suspects. That place has surveillance cameras everywhere. This is whatever happened there is fairly sophisticated, right? We're also getting into a T-square here. Sun at 14 degrees, squaring Chiron. Sun at 14 degrees, squaring the moon, wide square. We get into squares, and what are we dealing with? We're dealing with change. We're dealing with the hard dynamics of change. And even a moon-Neptune opposition, another Neptune opposition. The moon and Libra trying to bring some balance into things. And remember, Libra is the sign that follows Virgo, and you have two characters at 27 and 28 Virgo. So the resolution of that kind of crazy wild degree happens to be Libra, and the move towards more balance. I think this is interesting. This opposition with the moon, with Neptune and Jupiter, and even the T-squares are interesting. Because ultimately, even though it's out of sign, the moon is, or out of element, the moon is trining with Pluto, which is regenerative. This is a very interesting chart. There's more to this chart than meets the eye. 100%. Especially when you have Gemini on the ascendant. And I think, where is Saturn on 9/11? Let me find that really quickly. I apologize for not having it nailed down here. There's a couple things I want to look at. Actually, maybe this one. Okay, so we're going to 2001, 9/11. So Saturn is at 14 Libra. So can you see where I'm going with this? So let's bring this back up. So in this event, Venus is at 15 Libra. Saturn from 9/11 would be right there. Right there. So everything about this event echoes back to 9/11. It's almost like a controlled demolition. The question is, I suppose, if we can answer it. And a lot of people, not a lot, some will speculate that this group or that group or this group or that group or this person is behind it. Again, with Neptune being in these final degrees of Pisces, I think it's challenging. And even with the opposition here, right? People's emotional motivations in Libra, I think, are good, are trying to find some level of balance and harmony. Boy, they are really out here tonight, man. They're planting some flowers out there. This is a young male with some tiny horns. It's kind of cool. Kind of cool living in the country sometimes. Oh yeah, you're tuned in, aren't you? He's looking around. I think he sees me through the window. Yeah, he does. Yeah, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. He sees the lights, his tail's wagging. Yeah, I'm not going to do anything. It's okay. Boy, they are really hyper attenuated, aren't they? Guess you have to be. Anyway, this is an echo event of 9/11. I mean, look, even the ascendant is at 9:30. Was that 9:36? What is that? Or 9:38? I can't really see it. Let me zoom in here. Yeah, 9:38. 3 and 8 is 11, right? 9/11. It's a 9/11 related event. Antares right over here on the cusp of the seventh house. Antares is a fixed star version of Aries in a lot of ways. Pretty interesting. And Aldebaran. So you have an opposition between Aldebaran and Antares right there at that moment in time. Same degree. Look at that. 9 and 9. Super interesting. To me, I mean, all these charts are interesting, but this one to me is really interesting because there's a story that's being told here. And it has to do with 9/11. And I wonder what comes next with the 9/11 stuff. Where's that 0? Let me just look at this. I'm going to look at 0 Gemini. So it'll be 1 Gemini. So 1 Gemini in the Sabian symbols is a pretty interesting symbol for this event. A glass-bottomed boat reveals undersea wonders. So if you just look at the idea of a glass-bottomed boat, you're sitting in this boat, but because you have this thing beneath you, you're able to see things that you can't normally see beneath the boat itself, right? I mean, they used to have these things. I'm not sure they have them anymore. But you can look down, and in clear water, you can see what the marine life is doing beneath the boat. So it's a view into a world that you don't normally have access to. This is what Rudyard has to say about it. The revelation of unconscious energies and submerged psychic structures. Within the relative security of a boat, an individual can learn to be aware of the as yet hidden contents of man's collective unconscious, provided this boat, that is to say, his ego that separates him from the collective planetary psyche of mankind, has been given a glass bottom. The conscious mind must have become, in part at least, translucent. This translucency is not direct openness. The window of the mind remains closed, but through it, the individual can become aware of the outside. Here, outside means the psychic depths below the normal level of consciousness. At this first stage of discovery process, one can only speak of vision, not identification. The feeling is one of wonder. I did not know this could exist. How beautiful, or how exciting. A new dimension of reality is perceived by the earnest inquirer. So one of the things that came through when I was interviewing Christopher Knowles on Friday is the symbolic nature of events. So what is the destruction? And without getting into the rigorous ideology of where you fit in the attribution of meaning to the destruction of the Georgia Guidestones, on a symbolic level, like, how does it hit you? How do you feel about it? Right. And not one from like, okay, well, this is either, if you're a black pillar, it's like, oh, well, game over, right? They've accomplished their mission. And that's why this happened. Or if you're on the white hat team, you're like, oh, this is clear sign that something happened here and something good. I think it's connected to 9/11 based on the chart and based on the timing with Bush and everything related to it. Everything related to it. That's how I'm interpreting it. But how does it hit you? Right? How does it hit you? Because that's what we're talking about with this symbol. And that has to do with Pallas and Gemini. How does it hit you? What kind of meaning, theoretical or pattern, can you relate to in a way where you're experiencing this, not based on your particular ideology, but in terms of, see, for me, it has that 9/11 quality to it. Like, that's how I feel about it. And when I first saw it, I said, oh, well, and they're going to go in and they're going to, they've done this with 9/11, the Twin Towers, Building 7. They did it with the Murrah building in Oklahoma City. They did it with Waco. They're going to do it with Uvalde, the Robb Elementary School. They will bulldoze things and bulldoze them very quickly in order to make sure, even with 9/11, the cleanup job with 9/11 was very, very rapid, and it was controlled. It was a controlled cleanup in as much as it was controlled in other ways, in my opinion. So that's how it hits me when I see it, when I experience it. It's like, oh, and then you add in sort of the data points. And I think that's what this degree of the Sabian symbols is talking about. It's like, how does it hit you? What kind of window does it open up? And the other thing too is that if you're sitting in a glass bottom boat, right, the bottom is underneath your feet. So it's understanding, right? It's under your standing. It's whatever you're able to connect with. It gives you this portal, this insight into your understanding because of the glass bottom boat. All right, let's take a quick look. It's getting late. I know you folks on the East Coast like to get to bed early. I'll get into the duality magic. I talked a little bit about it last week, or I'm sorry, earlier in the show. And I know we're kind of trending into 9/11 and Gemini and duality, and it's in a dark, magical, occultic event. But I think I'm going to save it to next week because we're going on 3.5 hours, right? I started at 6:30, and 2.5 hours. 7:30, 8:30, 9. Maybe I can do it. Why don't I do it? I'll stay in the flow here. So we'll take a look at 9/11, not 9/11, this dualistic magic piece that I'm talking about. And it's not practical magic. It's not like light magic. When I say light magic, I'm not talking about light versus dark, but kind of light touch. Because there's things theoretical. Here's the challenge of the world now. People are shut down to light magic. And there was a time in my life where I would live for that. Like, I would live to have like magical moments throughout the day, right? And not magical moments like, oh, well, a butterfly just crossed my path or something like that, but the potential to kind of operate non-ceremonial magic on a daily basis. It was like a big part of my life. And just looking for those kinds of openings to, be a kind of a creative force in the world, but not always in like huge headline grabbing ways, small ways. And I still am, but I find so I had a moment like that this weekend. I'll share it with you. So we're out to dinner, and there's a guy that I know who's who I've met before. I don't want to get into the specifics too much, but I decided that I was going to really talk to this guy and, ask him questions in a human to human way. And I did that. And by the end of the night, like I could tell that this guy's energy had changed. Like his energy had changed, and he was enthusiastic. And it was like somebody was hearing his story. Somebody was asking him questions that were important to him and his life and his understanding about who he is and how he was evolving. He told me some very interesting stuff. He told me that he got incredibly sick with COVID, and he's close to my age, and he told me that he was ready to die. And I thought, well, that's an interesting statement, that you're ready to die. And he said, I understood what happens to older people and how they stop eating. I had stopped eating. And I told God, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. Take me. And then by surrendering, he immediately started to get better. And he was down here in a trough with COVID. And after he had that moment, he started to go up. So he gave me a gift, right? He told me that story. And that was a great gift, to listen to somebody's turning point in their life. So he said that COVID had become his greatest teacher in that moment, right? Well, not just the moment that we were hanging out, but when he was really, really sick. And so I got something out of it too, right? I got this transformational exchange with this person. And it's like, wow, that's profound. And I was like, thanks for sharing that with me. But then I also felt like for him, it was an opportunity for him to share that with somebody in a way that was, more than anecdotal, I think. So to me, that's magic. That's just a small slice of it. Like when you're connected in the world with other people, and that you're dealing with them in a way where there's possibility, right? There's possibility, and you sense the possibility with an individual or a situation. You kind of go into it, then you open things up. And then in that moment, there's revelation, things are revealed. To me, that's magic. And when I talk about the dualistic magic that I'm about to get into, that's not really what I'm talking about. It's different. I would call it more like God magic or something along those lines. Just the magic that's inherent in each and every one of us. Oh. Very interesting. You just see something here. No. Very, very interesting. Huh. I was going to go to this website, which I was going to use as a quote, and it's not coming online. So that's fascinating. All right, I'm going to take that as a sign. I'm going to hold off on the the exposition of dark, dualistic, occult magic until next week. That's really interesting. I'm not going to push the tide. All right, let's take a quick look at the chart of the moment. Let's just do that. Let's find out where we are. And we'll sign off here. And I'll deal with my cat who has become a basket case. No, seriously, since Rosie passed away, and you know, the other thing too is that before I moved to this farmhouse, he had no problem with fleas, none whatsoever, none. But because there were dogs here, and we kind of live in the country, it's been a bit of an issue for him. And I've got like the stuff on him, you know, the flea shit that kills the fleas, and a collar and a vacuum and everything. It's not like it's, you know, a flea hotel here, but I think that's another part of it for Jasper. Jasper's having a rough Saturn transit, I think. He even said so. All right, let's look at the chart of the moment. Look at that, Pluto on the ascendant right there. We got some intensity, right? Pluto on the ascendant, for all you people that are Capricorn risings, you've got Pluto around your ascendant, you've been going through it. You have been fucking going through it. I can tell you that right now. I know a lot of people, not a lot, enough, Pluto on the ascendant, Capricorn on the ascendant, Pluto transiting, man, their lives have been intense. Ultimately, you're transforming your life to take responsibility for it. That's what it's about. The last vestiges of looking for people to change your life, looking for people to change your circumstances. There's only one, and it's you. Because that's what Capricorn rising is about. It's about taking responsibility for your own well-being and your trajectory into the world. So if you've got Capricorn rising around this degree and Pluto's there or later, you know what I'm talking about. And with Pluto retrograde, what you haven't cleaned up, you will be. We do have that sextile, the Pluto-Neptune sextile. They're both retrograde. And we've talked a lot about Neptune tonight. But these two planetary forces are working in concert. And that's an even like bigger discussion. They're working in concert with each other. Oh my God. It's kind of like when Pluto was in the final degrees of Virgo, you had Neptune in those later degrees of Scorpio. But this is different, right? These are different energies, because Capricorn is the end of Pluto and Capricorn is the end of the culture as we know it. Everything that has risen to this point, it will be transformed. And even with Neptune, right? There's something here, especially about the retrograde, that things may look difficult, and you may see the ocean coming in and wearing down the sandcastle that the kid had built, which is symbolic of, you know, our culture. I remember watching that actually in the Kodak World's Pavilion in the World's Fair in 1964. It was a big deal, big screen. And it was a scene where a kid builds a sandcastle on the beach and the ocean comes in and begins to erode it, right? So with the retrograde here, this is what's happening. But it also leads to something new. What looks like, for all intents and purposes, like a loss or a reversal is actually going to move us forward. Now, the reversal part may not be fun for anybody, but keep in mind that this is what's happening, right? So the tide has come in, and it's kind of worn away the sandcastle, and it's moving back out, right? And that tide's going to come in again, and it's going to work in this process. And eventually, both these planets will move forward. And when they do move forward, they're going to be moving into new territory, brand new territory. In fact, they almost move together simultaneously. So Pluto in Aquarius, Neptune in Aries, and something new is coming, right? that's what's happening. Something new is coming, but we're seeing the dissolution of the old here. But it's working, I think, towards what I would consider to be a positive, ultimately a positive resolution. And what needs to be taken away, whatever the tide is going to take away, needs to happen. Right? So what do we got this week on the kind of the more personal front? We're continuing to see Mars, in this square with Pluto. As the week goes on, it'll start to separate from Pluto and begin to move a little bit more towards Uranus slowly, but not necessarily this week, more next week. We'll talk more about that next week on Sunday night with the Mars-Uranus conjunction coming up, which again could be potentially explosive. I'll spend some more time looking at that. We have the moon in Sag. So we're coming up on a full moon in Capricorn, which I'm not entirely crazy about. So what are we talking, like Tuesday? Yeah, I mean, to me, the full moon in Capricorn, especially during the time we're in, illuminates austerity, not prosperity, but austerity. And people are going to have to make some very difficult emotional choices with this full moon in Capricorn. Now, I do think that potentially there can be some degree of illumination around what I would call forced austerity. That's possible. That's totally possible. But people have to make some pretty intense emotional choices coming up here. Like, are you going to lean into the system to provide your emotional and security needs? Or are you going to lean on yourself, right? Because this is what we're talking about. The other thing with the moon in Capricorn, like if it was a new moon, we'd be dealing with kind of more fear in some ways, or a balsamic moon. But here there's a clear division. This is a clear division between the so-called elites, right? Saturn, L, and the folk. When you deal with Cancer, you're dealing with the folk, the people. And the moon, I believe, is in its fall here in Capricorn. So it's not necessarily the best of full moons, right? We're not going to get into that really juicy full moon again until it's in Pisces, which brings us into Virgo season. We'll have a very unusual full moon in Aquarius. Kind of interesting, kooky, weird. But this one is, to me, this upcoming full moon shines a light clearly on where things are going and where you're going to lean into, right? Are you going to lean into trusting these Capricornian, Saturnian overlords, or are you going to lean into the folk, right? Your ability to navigate through the world and have the right emotional content, the right attitude. This is a lot of it too is about attitude. And it goes back to what I was talking about that happened this weekend. Because I feel like this is something we've lost touch with in our day-to-day life. We've lost touch with the ability to be humane towards one another. And to be, and I work on this, and to be fair and just with one another, especially if people deserve it. Some people don't deserve it, in which case don't waste much time on them. And I feel like this full moon coming up, Tuesday, Wednesday, it feels to me like we'll see some things that are going to be difficult to process emotionally. And we're going to have to figure out kind of where we are moving forward on this spectrum. So I think this could be a difficult full moon, especially when it comes to things like food and what's happening with the food supply. Like, I think we could get some unnerving news around this. Know your neighbors. Know your neighbors. I mean, this is a good time to do that. Venus is in Gemini. It's all local. And moving into a trine, a closer trine over the next 3 days with Saturn in Aquarius. So these are really opportune times to build some of these local relationships. Basically from now through Thursday this week, work on this, right? Especially when we get to Tuesday and we see this illumination with this arid and kind of cold, austere moon, during a time when theoretically we should be, celebrating to some degree our seasonal place in the world, right? So it's an interesting week. And I think the big day is going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, when we get into that full moon place. Yeah, start building some local connections. So by the time we get into Wednesday, the sun will be at 20 Cancer, moving into more of a trine with Neptune. So there's a release point here with the opposition, with the full moon, Capricorn. There's a release point with the sun trining Neptune. There's a path here, like let go into the path. So you can do some easy building, like go into the path of least resistance, see what's happening in the world, understand it. Don't be freaked out by it. Because then that moon just coming off of the fullness is going to start to conjunct Pluto. And I think we could get into some heavy duty financial territory by the end of the week. That's my sense here. And trust your instincts. This is what we're talking about with this in conjunct. Trusting your instincts, and with the moon in Sagittarius, understand and know what you believe to be true, like at an authentic level, to the best of your ability. This is not it's sort of a separate conversation from where Pisces is in Neptune. It's a bit of a separate conversation in the duality piece, but it's an important one, and it's trusting your gut. Your gut is different than your ideology. It's a different operation. It's 9/11 right now here. Should I end at 9/11? I was about to end it anyway. It'd be a little abrupt, wouldn't it? And sort of inorganic. But I was kind of wrapping up. But I do think we're done. I think we've gone over a lot of territory tonight. And I hope it's been helpful. If you like astrology, you can get my course. It's on my website. And it's a 16-hour downloadable course that's available there. Don't forget the event in October. And, try to make it happen. Get creative. Like, hook up with somebody. Share the writing. Share a room. Right? It'll be worth it. Trust me. You'll have a good time. And there are people who have made it happen. So again, thank you to everybody for being here, for supporting the show. You can also support the show by subscribing on my website, $5, $10, $20. And I think I'm going to send out an email this week. I'm working on getting more going with some of this stuff. All right. Thank you for being here. I have to deal with my basket case cat, who has been taking a mental health break for tonight, but he's demanded that I assist not only his mental health, but his abdominal health. He's hungry. So we'll see you tomorrow over on 15 Minutes of Flame. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about, but I'm sure between tonight and tomorrow, there'll be plenty. There always is. One of the most fertile times in, I think, history to just talk shit about shit. Okay, thanks for being here. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart said what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you've been in the